Journeys Ahead, Aurora Legends, Act 1 Finale, Doppleganger. Written and narrated by T.S. ProArt. Friday, May 15th, 2018. It was both a gloomy and stormy afternoon day within the city of Aurora. Pouring rain battered and smashed against the world. Lightning flashed with thunder roaring shortly back. The wind howled like wolves in the night, its cry sharp and ear-piercing, annoying many, but others not so much. Inside Nock's motorcrafts, both Voyd and Jaida rested in the Spark's now practically shared bed. The two were side by side, tucked in and watching a movie upon Voyd's school laptop. The Spark himself was laid back on the bed, wearing basic lazy blue clothes, while Jaida rested with her head upon his shoulders, an arm latched over his body. Staring at the screen, they watched an old monster movie, one that used suitmation and props to make the scene come to life.
"There's two Goliaths!"
the main human character said, being poorly dubbed over with English.
"Who's the real one?"
a woman exclaimed with terrible acting, as the big monster fired a green heat ray over its duplicate, revealing a mechanical machine beneath, accompanied by a dramatic blare and old zany music. This is so cheesy. Jaida giggled out, finding the whole scene to be a ludicrous but oddly charming payoff. It's definitely better than the slop I would find on the streets. It's not stuttering or being behind a glass case. It's more than enough entertainment in my book. Smirking the Void's comment, Jaida turned her head and then pressed her face into his cheek, making him side-eye her with a confused look in his eyes. "Am I entertaining?" she asked, proceeding to reach her arm around and poke the spot of Void's face where his nose should have been. "Plenty," he replied with a turn, now being eye to eye with Jaida, almost literally. "Whoa, you got little stars in your eyes. Is that a trait from your mom?" the guitarist asked, as Voyd stared deeply into her own tangy glowing irises. All Sparks had a twinge of stardust in their eyeballs. If they didn't, they're definitely not a Spark, Voyd assured, as Jaida began to curve her head a bit in order to give him a kiss. "Neato," she whispered, preparing to engage them both into an intimate moment. "Hey, kids! You need to get down here! Right! Nock suddenly boasted from out of nowhere as he slid into the doorway of the room and halted, seeing what was about to go down. "Pieces! You two know you can shut the door, right?" he asked, whilst covering his misshapen eyes, making the duo scramble out of the bed with embarrassment. Sorry," Jaida apologized, her face flushing into the color of an orange, while Voyd just awkwardly smiled. "Good lord, just get down here. I need you both, especially you, Voyd, to explain something." To this, the duo looked at one another, and then proceeded to make their way downstairs with Nock, entering the living room, where the TV was on and blaring the news. "What is it?" Voyd nervously inquired, as the heavy and gruff words of Mason Sato blared on through.
"There you have it, folks! Undeniable proof that the Blue Bullet is a mess!"
he shouted with his crusty middle-aged voice, as the screen displayed security camera footage, showing the bullet blasting apart a jewelry store in the middle of the night. What the... Jaida asked, her mind taken aback by the scene unfolding. Nock ruffed, as more surveillance camera footage appeared, one from a coffee shop being destroyed by the bullet in the middle of the night as well, then a local business in the north side, and so many other acts of vandalism and destruction. "Voyd, what the hell were you doing?" Nock demanded to know, as the Spark himself slowly approached the TV screen with a look of absolute confusion on his face. "Blue, why are you..." Jaida wanted to know, still in disbelief, as the screen showed the blue bullet torching money from a bank to ash. With a turn, the bullet looked into the camera with blaring blue eyes before shooting it down, leaving behind a shattered still frame of a gun raised. That's not me. Voyd at last spoke, his voice soft and stunned, making the two beside him turn to meet his glowing starry eyes. Guys, that's not me, Voyd repeated as he reached for the remote and paused the screen.
What do you mean that's not you? It looks just like you!
Nock asked, nearly shouting, as Voyd couldn't break his eyes away from the screen. I didn't do these things! I was here last night during dinner! Look at the time! Voyd boasted, pointing at the bank's timestamp, which said 6 p.m.
Wait, what? How does that make sense?
Nock now muttered, with a clear sense of confusion leaving his mouth, before Jaida blurted aloud. You're being framed! Snapping their heads, the duo watched as Jaida began to pace around the room with thought and so many questions. Voyd, this is clearly some a-hole trying to drag your name through the mud. It happened to me a couple of times. Girl Scouts trust. You've got an imposter running about. Jaida yelled with a frantic tone, as Voyd raised a baffled eyebrow. An imposter who has arm cannons like mine? He questioned, making Jaida pause. Well, okay, I can't explain that, but clearly someone is doing this to screw you over. Turning back to the screen and seeing his uncanny doppelganger, Voyd thought for a long time, before furrowing his brow and nodding with a huff. Well, suit up, sweetheart. We got us an imposter to find. And make sure your hoodie is up over your hair. It's storming. Voyd asked with a whirl and pointed to Jaida, who nodded and warped the change. Jet, scan into all possible cameras. See if our little trickster is visible. Voyd then commanded to the robot, who was busy cracking eggs in the kitchen. Cot, you... Voyd then said, turning to the couch, finding Cot asleep with Pofnu passed out on his chest, snoring bubbles into his watery head. Nock. Keep us updated. I don't know who this guy thinks he is, but I've got a few words to share. The spark switched his command down to his mechanic buddy, who nodded with a stern stare.
Will do. But be careful. Wherever they are, they're clearly packing heat. It's uncanny how similar the costume is.
Nock replied as he and Voyd turned back to the paused image. It looked as though Voyd was staring into a mirror. With a blue crest-shaped portal opening in the sky, Voyd, now suited up with his wings brought forth, flew out of its sapphire shine and into the rain, with the cosmic angel riding upon his back. Soaring above the northern side, the duo looked down, Voyd of which, now finding it somewhat easier to deal with heights, even if there was still tons of fear in his heart. Jet, find anything yet? The spark asked with a concerned and desperate tone, as they soared through the downpour with a mixture of blue and orange shines. My creator. Search the in-progress skyscraper a few blocks west. My hacking scan suggests a hint of blue and black swooping up its side. It could be our culprit. Nodding, Voyd turned downwards and began to soar towards Jet's coordinates. There, not too far off, was the skeletal structure of a tall, in-progress building, looking menacing with the stormy night. Squinting, the duo soared up and over before landing into its upper wall, less barren floors. Whew! Nice and dry, Jaida exclaimed with relief as she flared her hair out to heat them both up from the soggy dampness. Squinting, Voyd began to scan the scene, examining all he could through his visor, noticing there was absolutely nothing of note, at least not yet. I don't understand. Are they able to fly too? Voyd questioned, his tone dour and nerves racked as he tried scanning for life forms, finding, once more, nothing in the area. What if it's somehow another spark. Jaida cautiously suggested, as she eyed an employee's schedule that was left behind on a resting table. Monday through Saturday, 5 a.m. to 4 p.m. Yeesh, she muttered. Impossible. They're all gone. Voyd bluntly responded, as he turned to look out over the stormy nightfall. Right. Sorry, I just don't understand how someone could not only replicate your persona, as well as your weapons. The angel wondered, feeling a bit uneasy given the circumstances. That's what I'm trying to understand. So if you're here, why don't you come on out and show yourself, faker? Voyd shouted, blasting off a warning shot to alert anyone who may have been nearby. As if on cue, both Voyd and Jaida were blindsided by a crystal blue energy blast shooting forth in between their helmeted heads. It was as if the world went in slow motion, as they dodged and watched the strike hit a nearby table, shattering it to smithereens, and throwing leftover donuts into the air. Whoa! Cried the guitarist, as both her and Voyd landed and turned towards their right, seeing the strangest thing thus far in their vigilante careers. Standing within the furthest back, gloomy opening, highlighted by lightning and neon city lights, was the blue bullet. Or rather, not the blue bullet? He looked identical to Voyd. Same height, same body build, same horns, same everything. Even down to the holes in his white scarf. Whoa. Jaida whispered with a hint of dread as Voyd deployed his arm cannon and aimed it right at the doppelganger. Hey! Who do you think you are? It's really creepy and messed up to copy someone, bud. Who are you? The spark demanded to know, as the fake took one heavy step forwards, then another, glaring the duo down with his own blue eyes. I'm the blue bullet. You're the faker here. They said in Voyd's voice. It was horrifyingly pitch perfect. The cadence matched, the voice even cracked, and everything. What the hell? The real Voyd stuttered, his rage slowly turning to fear. I'm the blue bullet. The real bullet. Get away from my friend! The faker stated, before suddenly summoning out a pair of identical blue wings and blasting forwards at terrifying speed. Before Voyd and Jaida could react, both of the bullets were smashed into one another and sent sprawling over the nearby ledge and into the rain. Voyd! Jaida screamed, feeling a harsh whiplash to the sudden turn in events. Entering a freefall, Voyd and the doppelganger went spiraling towards the busy city below. The roads, now a death trap of speeding metal vehicles. Yelling with panic, Voyd quickly summoned his wings as well, bringing the duo into a whirlwind of motion. Like two hawks latched around one another's talons, the two bullets spun and flipped, their wings creating a spectacle to all those below. A world of gasps and cries of shock exploded from those on the street, as the two Voyds soared right above the traffic. Kicking off each other, the duo, both with blazing rage in their hearts, flew after one another, confusing all those who were able to see the events unfolding. Who are you? Voyd called again, having the barrel roll away from the imposter's sudden rapid fire from their transformed hands. That, to the spark's dismay, began to hit the nearby buildings. I am the blue bullet. This fight quickly went from chaos to a terrifying ballet of high-speed maneuvers. The doppelganger continued spitting bursts of crackling energy from their own cannons that left sizzling trails of smoke in the passing air. Each blast was a blatant attempt to obliterate, to leave nothing but scorched earth in its wake. Voyd, true to Jaida's wishes to keep her city safe, refused to match fire with fire. The spark instead weaved and dodged the concentrated blasts, his own movements a blur of spark-induced power. He closed the distance, the wind screaming past his horns, as he delivered a series of lightning-fast punches and kicks, each blow aimed at disrupting his foe's offensive. The contrast between their fighting styles was stark. The doppelganger relied on raw, destructive power, a brute force designed to overwhelm. Voyd, on the other hand, was now back to being a force of focused motion, a whirlwind of blows and evasive tactics. They flew between skyscrapers, their battle of matched attacks echoing off glass and steel. Aurora below was now becoming fully aware to the commotion above. More began to point and shout, creating collective unease upon them all. The fight intensified, escalating in both speed and ferocity. The air roared with the energy of each close quarter exchange, the mix of punches and explosions a disastrous dance. Finally, their struggle became a desperate grapple, wings beating wildly as they fought for air dominance. Then, the inevitable happened. Their entangled forms, locked in mortal combat, careened out of control. Like a pair of missiles gone rogue, they plummeted past the main city and entered the outskirts. The ground below began rushing up to meet them at alarming speed. Then, after a few short seconds, they crashed right through gasoline tanks to a power plant. A deafening roar echoed through Aurora then, as the two landed hard upon the wet cement of the building's front. The impact quickly became cataclysmic. Fuses and leaking oil sparked and exploded like miniature stars, sending out showers of blinding light and a deafening crackle. The power plant, previously humming with a steady, controlled energy, now reeled from the sudden violence. The battle had come to a screeching, spectacular halt, leaving destruction in its wake. The air now crackled with a tension that went beyond the normal antagonistic encounter. Voyd and his doppelganger stood, both battered and beaten from the fall. Behind them, the blazing inferno raged, a stark contrast to the rain that poured down from above. "I'm the blue bullet," the false Voyd said again, as the two locked eyes. A shiver ran down the real Voyd's spine. It wasn't fear, exactly, but a deeply unsettling realization that now began to grasp at his soul. He was truly facing himself, not just physically, but with the same innate abilities. The doppelganger, whatever it was, being a perfect reflection in every single way. It moved with the same grace, the same coiled power. Their initial exchange was enough to tell Voyd that it knew his moves. It somehow studied and learned. It was him. Shouting while making the first attack, Voyd's lead uppercut was met with the same blow, each fist hitting with metal slashing force. The shock was palpable to the young spark. Never had his own movements been so effortlessly countered, let alone anticipated with unnerving accuracy. The fight escalated quickly. Voyd deployed his own Nova Blades, and to his shock, the fake deployed them too. "What?" he asked as the two engaged with deadly strikes. The Nova Blades, normally Voyd's ace in the hole, became a terrifying symphony of a clashing essence. Each thrust and parry reflected in the other. They moved with dizzying speed, a blur of blue armor and steel edges. The doppelganger's agility matched Voyd's move for move, an almost mockery of his swift-taught, mother-trained reflexes. It was like battling his own reflection. Then came the artillery. Both combatants unleashed their arm cannons, blasting bolts of searing energy. Each blast was countered by an identical one, the air filled with the hiss of a pop and their power. It was a bizarre and destructive dance, a showcase of raw power that was both awe-inspiring and deeply disturbing. When they fired their energy pulses from their horns protruding from their heads, their battlegrounds, a parking lot, was momentarily lit up as a blinding flash of light met with an identical one, both blue, both strong. The fight continued its relentless pace, each blow met with an equal and opposite force. No advantage could be gained, and the fight seemingly would never end. Finally, with synchronized leaps, they collided. The two were locked in a deadly embrace now, with a rolling landfall. One hand gripped on the other's wrist, both panting with exertion and rage. The doppelganger's battle helmet, a terrifying copy of Voyd's own, was inches away, nearly eye to eye. Their stares locked, and for the first time, Voyd saw not just a reflection of himself, but a hint of something more. The eyes behind the visor They were slightly a shade of purple, buzzing with a static effect. "Blue!" Jaida screamed as she warped in with a fire blast ready to strike. "Angel, help me!" the real Voyd shouted. "Don't listen to him! Help me!" cried the Doppleganger, leaving Jaida panicking on what she should do. "You both look the same! Give me a hint!" Jaida begged as anxiety began to engulf her soul. "You know who the real one is! Trust me!" cried the Doppelganger. "Jaida, look into our eyes! Look into our eyes!" The real Voyd bellowed as he and the fake continued to try and overpower the other. "Your eyes," Jaida whispered, recalling the conversation from earlier. Looking closely, she was able to discern Voyd's eyes behind the visor, his crystal blue stare with hints of stardust. The Doppelgangers, however, were less lively. Digital, static, false. A robot? Jaida asked to herself, recalling back to the day she and Voyd first met. Scowling behind her helmet, she spun around and hurled a massive ball of fire, striking the Doppelganger and sending him flying back with an inhuman mechanical scream. The fake went soaring up through the air, and then landed into the flames afar, seemingly put out of the fight. "Blue, please tell me that's you!" Jaida nervously asked as the real Voyd stood and retracted his visor, showing Jaida his eyes improper. "Good shot," he gasped with reconcealment as they both rushed forwards and embraced. "Oh, are you okay? You scare me," Jaida now worriedly questioned. "Don't worry, I'm alive. You saw the eyes, right? That wasn't a spark. Human or even a living creature." Voyd inquired up to his beloved, who rapidly nodded her head. Yet, before she could reply, the two heard something that made their blood run cold. I'm the blue bullet." Turning their heads, the bombastic duo watched in horror as the fake spark slowly exited the fire, revealing the horrific truth underneath. Half of its body was now burning, charring away and melting. This revealed white and black plates with red energized armor beneath, glistening menacingly within the fire. In response, Voyd and Jaida took a step back, watching in horror as the faker stood tall, his eyes going from blue to a deep shade of glowing ruby red. Then, it began to reveal its true self. Using its hands, it tore off chunks of its fake suit, ripping and tearing the blue pieces away while beginning to transform into a much larger metal being. Its arms and legs elongated, revealing white and black plates with sharp pistons beneath. Its waist and legs stretched as well, metal gears and rivets turning and screeching as it did so. The head shot upwards, extending with red glowing tipped horns, blooming forth in a dazzling display of energy. It was then the duo noticed its chest. It was a glass container, holding the broken off shard that Shallow had taken the 2 weeks prior, seeming to power this machine. In its back, a vial of orange energy was locked in a battery piece, Jaida's blood, looking to enhance it as well. What the? Voyd stared in awe, watching as the hands turned into large metal four-clawed mitts, burning with a red power that replaced the blue, finishing its transformation. It was tall with white and black steels, resembling Voyd but in all the wrong ways. It was an android, an artificial being whose hands rotated with blinding red energy. Upon its head, there sat the label D468. Okay, this guy? Definitely a robot, Jaida wordily stated, watching as the machine sprouted 2 blank metal wings with a pair of thrusters igniting it into the air.
"I am the blue bullet,"
it said, as its 2 red visor eyes formed a giant ruby shining cyclops eye that burned with a sense of destruction. Oh, you've gotta be kidding me. Voyd whimpered, knowing things were about to get very, very ugly. The battle began with the crack of thunder. The Doppleganger, propelled by its rockets that flared from its back, launched itself forwards towards the duo, making them evade. Whirling around, it hovered for a moment, a menacing silhouette against the flames, before unleashing a barrage of searing red beams from its clawed palms. The blast tore through the air, narrowly missing Voyd and Jaida, who scrambled for cover behind a mangled vehicle that was caught in the explosion. Holy crap! Who built this guy? Jaida yelled as she peeked out. Raising her hands, she sent a burst of roaring fire erupting from her palms, a wave of heat that surged towards the robotic imitation. The flames lashed out, but the Doppelganger just batted the fire away with a backhand motion. The blow causing miniature shockwaves to ripple through the air. Who do you think? There's something going on with Notorious Industries. And if that's the case, I think I'm gonna need a freaking lawyer. Voyd exclaimed before leaving his spot and charging forwards, his Nova blades extending with a metallic schnick. He moved with a speed born from years of honed skill, weaving through the swirling flames. Voyd quickly launched himself towards the Doppelganger, aiming a ferocious slash. The mechanical beast reacted with uncanny speed, mirroring Voyd's movements again, and met his blade with its own claws, causing an echo to erupt through the ruined plant exterior. The impact momentarily locking their arms, showcasing the unsettling similarities between the two. Stop mimicking me! Voyd shouted, his voice laced with frustration. He disengaged, leaping back to the ground with the machine right with him. This realization made the fight all the more unnerving. Every attack he made, the Doppelganger countered like before, with a distorted, more powerful copy. The Spark quickly switched tactics. Voyd reactivated his arm cannons, releasing rapid-fire pulses of concussive energy. The blast impacted against the Doppelganger's metal exterior, creating sparks, but the robot barely flinched. In response, the machine unleashed rockets from its back, tearing through the air and exploding near Voyd, causing pieces of concrete to rain down. Jaida, using this moment of confusion, teleported behind the robotic copy, her hands once again ablaze. She let loose a concentrated blast of fire, aiming for the joints in its legs. The flames engulfed the Doppelganger, causing the red lines on its armor to glow brighter, before it released what the duo could only guess to have been a magnetic pulse. Cars and debris went flying through the air. Jaida, without time to react, was knocked into a pile of rubble, and Voyd was tossed into a large steel pole. The structure bent severely at the impact. We have to bring this thing down! Jaida gasped, struggling to her feet. Voyd, using his own magic, began to etch runes into the ground, a circle of energy forming around their position. The runes pulsed with a faint blue light, enhancing his strength and speed. With a fierce yell, he hurled himself at the Doppelganger again, his chest rockets opening and blindsiding the machine. Using this momentum, Voyd swiftly managed to deploy his axe and land a blow on the robot's arm. The machine didn't react to the strike, other than to fire two red beams in the Voyd's shoulder plate. The Spark recoiled, but then landed his axe deep into the robot's side with a blazing blue shine. The Doppelganger roared, a sound that was hauntingly human for a robot, and unleashed another magnetic pulse, ripping up parts of the power plant. In horror, the duo watched as it grabbed a section of twisted metal and hurled it towards Voyd with a brutal force. Before the Spark could react, Voyd was hit hard and flew back into the ground, armor pieces flying and struggling to breathe. The Doppelganger, sensing the shift in momentum, moved to press its advantage. It began charging up another beam in its hands, but a wave of fire pushed it back. Leave him alone! Jaida's voice crackled with rage. She teleported around the Doppelganger, blasting fire from every angle, trying to distract the machine. But still, it swatted the flames away effortlessly, and it locked its gaze on Voyd again, who was struggling to stand. It charged up its hand beams once again, but then with a loud boom, the robot stumbled as a gunshot was struck to its head. "Open fire!" the voice of Sanction cried, as he and other officers, firefighters, and the like appeared on the scene, seeing all that had transpired in the last 30 seconds. "What is that thing?" a firefighter asked, as an A&N news chopper flew overhead, shining a spotlight on the machine. "Holy shit! It's a robot!" another cop shouted. "It's a fake! It's harming the Knights! The real bullet!" A firefighter cried, as the cops began to open fire upon the robot, overwhelming it from how much commotion was being brought down upon its body.
"I'm the blue bullet,"
it screamed back whilst trying to defend itself. As all this occurred, Voyd collapsed, his vision blurring, the world beginning to fade into a blackness. His body was broken and exhausted. His Nova runes that had bolstered him flickered and died. "Blue!" Jaida cried as she warped away from the firing squad and rushed to her boyfriend's aid. But there was little she could do. He had passed out like a light. With panic in her heart, Jaida attempted to wake him, all while the Doppleganger, the machine, whatever it was, blasted off into the night sky, shooting up like a rocket ship. "Blue! Blue!" Jaida begged, as Sanction ran up from behind, screaming that they needed a medic. "Get up! Get up!" Jaida wailed, only for Voyd Novason to remain still and silent.